right, everybody. Welcome back to the Jubilee Design Lecture Series. This is our second lecture this semester. And today we are very lucky because we have an international guest. His name is Lucas London, and he's the director of One Works. Actually, the designers who designed the St. John's Lateran Square. Lucas will give a lecture entitled Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano, Reflections Towards the Future. Just a few words about One Works Studio. It is a global design and consultancy firm offering an integrated approach to architecture, infrastructure, and urban engineering. They believe in creating dynamic, intuitive, and sustainable places where people and communities can connect with their environment and with each other. They deal with architecture, urbanism, and planning, transportation, environmental services, and much more. They have headquarters in Rome, Milan, Venice, London, Dubai. Yes, so they're very famous company. And I think you were involved in the City Life in Milan, right, as a project? Yes. So guys, if you will have a chance to visit Milan, please go visit City Life project, an amazing project. About the lecture will explore the design process undertaken to generate the public realm in front of the St. John's in Lateran Basilica in Rome, recently completed in anticipation of the Jubilee 2025. Lucas will share insights and lessons learned from leading this ambitious project, balancing Rome's inspiration to preserve its past while it's reaching forward to address the contemporary needs of its citizens and visitors. I am particularly glad that Lucas accepted our invitation. I actually learned that he came directly from London yesterday to give the lecture here. And so I'm very happy that he accepted the invitation. It is an exceptional opportunity for you guys to learn about public spaces in Rome and how designers are trying to solve problems related with the design of them. So long story short, I give the stage to Lucas. Thanks again for being with us. And now take your time. We're very happy to listen to your lecture.
I'll try this. Is this on? Thank you, Francesca. Is it working? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Francesca, for the introduction. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm really happy to share the process that we went through on Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano. Let's see. What do I click like this? Yeah. Before I get into the project, just a small personal note. The picture you see here is a studio similar to yours, a bit smaller, up in Vicenza. I don't know if you've had a chance to visit in the north in the Veneto, but some 20 years ago or more, I was a student there, and perhaps like some of you in the room, looking around Italy for the first time and just absolutely taken by the architecture, the public spaces, and this is quite different to what I was used to back in Florida. And well, I could say it left a bit of an impression on me. I always thought someday I have to find a way to do something in Italy, as just given its legacy. So it is a tremendous honor to have worked on Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano, kind of reflecting on this moment. And for yourselves, just think if being here, you see some opportunities, you can always find a way, I think. So, as Francesca mentioned, I'm now a director with a company called One Works, and we have this little tagline: infrastructure, real estate, and the spaces in between. This really sums up what we do as a practice. On the infrastructure side, we touch on a wide range of large-scale and very complex projects. This is the airport in Venice, Venice Marco Polo. It's a project we've been working on for the past 10 years and will continue to work on, hopefully, for the next 10 years. But really conceiving of this kind of hub, which is quite unique because it's not just an airport, it has a water terminal, so you can get off the plane and get on a boat straight into Venice. And we do a wide range of other types of projects. On the aviation side, we've touched about 30 airports in Italy, but we also do metro and railway stations and ports. On the real estate side, a whole range of projects that some are commercially driven, some are actually more, let's say, public sector. This is a project here in Rome, actually, the Ministry of Environment, a building that we're refurbishing, and that's currently going on. And on the spaces in between, urban design. This is actually one of many projects. Francesca mentioned City Life. This is a project in Mecca, which, funny enough, is actually the project that I joined OneWorks for some 8 years ago by now. So this too, a mega project. It spans 3.7 kilometers, so that's what, 2.5 miles, from the high-speed rail station all the way to the Grand Mosque of Mecca. And if you know the story in Mecca with the Hajj pilgrimage, it's all about moving people, moving pedestrians safely in an organized way, and of course, moving them for a very holy occasion. So it's perhaps on the basis of this project that we were ultimately selected when there was qualifications for Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano. They were looking specifically for practices with experience in public space in Italy, but also experience with creating public space for pilgrimage, and in terms of managing crowd flows and managing safety for large-scale events. Let's say we tick the boxes with this project, and it's one that's near and dear to me. I've been working on it now for 8 years. Happy to see that's under construction, and we'll go live soon to millions. But amazingly, Piazza San Giovanni beat Mecca to it in the sense that it got built quicker than we even expected. Just a bit about the project. We were appointed after the tender in June of 2023, so just 18 months before the opening, which in Roman terms is a second. Yeah, we had only 18 months to conceive of the design and have it delivered in time for a very strict deadline at the end of last year. And so it was a huge challenge facing us. And I think that element of time, is an important one to consider in the evolution of the project, within the scale of Rome, but also within the scale of the needs of reaching a very imminent deadline of the Jubilee. So perhaps you'll know a little bit about Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano, at least where it is on the map. It sits right here, right on the edges of the walls. And in this map, which is from 1830, you can see is very much at the edge of town. We'll see in a moment how that's grown. But Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano is one of 4 basilicas in Rome. In fact, is the most important. It is the place where the foundations of Christianity in the Roman Empire had started. So it predates St. Peter's, which is up here, right? So before there was a Vatican City, Christianity, the idea of the Pope, all of this was being founded at San Giovanni, the predecessor church, because the building we see there now is the 4th iteration. So this site is extremely important, and is why it's considered the Archbasilica of Rome. And you can see in terms of proximities, if we compare its location to the center of Rome, St. Peter's is actually much closer. Even Santa Maria Maggiore, fairly closer. Here we're at the edge of town. The only basilica that's further is St. Paul, outside the walls. So as the name implies, it is even further. This was the situation in 1830. If we look at today, there's a lag. We can see the city has clearly grown. San Giovanni is no longer the edge of town, is very much in the center. It's within walking range or within the network of public transportation. And this is something really important to consider in the way that citizens and visitors perceive the basilica, because for many, this is the hinterlands. They'll never really visit. But it's actually just 10 minutes away or 15 minutes away by foot from the Colosseo. So something to keep in mind. In fact, that dawned on us when we went to visit the site after we won. I got in late at night and staying in a hotel nearby. I immediately went to the site just to see this place. And it was desolate. It was empty. It was a bit barren. It's not to say it was unused. People are actually there. That image is a bit dark, yeah? But every bench was occupied. But the space itself definitely felt a bit peripheral. It didn't feel like you were in the center of town. And there was a kind of feeling of, it wasn't really a designed space. It was a leftover or an incidental space. Going back the next morning with the team, approaching the site, and of course, the protagonist is the basilica itself. But the public space in front isn't doing much to contribute to the importance of the basilica, or to making a place that really elevates the quality of life for people. It's some benches, but very dominated by infrastructure. In fact, you have this road running right through the middle. One curb, a second curb. Oops. Disappeared. Yeah, there we go. Multiple curbs. Not really conducive to being a piazza, really. More about having a central road through the middle, which one thing we took from that was that there is this importance of axiality in the space. Most people standing at the end of that axis to take a photo. Yeah? So that was important to us. We walked around, of course, the plants, the flowers. This has been, if we were to say, one of the points of tension or creative tension in the project would be the role of landscape in the project. Me personally, fell in love with the wildflowers here that are not really managed, but nature's sort of implied that there should be plants here. There's something beautiful about them, and they add a certain softness to the space. Rome, of course, having so much pavement that having a bit of softness is a good thing. We also know the role that landscape plays in reducing heat islands. So for us, the plants were an opportunity, but we were told very, very early that the project is a square. The project is not a garden. It's meant to be a square. And this also meant no trees, and I'll mention why here in a moment. So this was a challenge for us. We're saying, but look, really, we can make squares with plants, yeah, can't we? But the conversation, as we started getting into it, we had to remind ourselves, what's the context of Rome? What is a public space in the minds of the Romans, in the minds of the authorities, in the minds of the Sovrintendenza, which is the heritage board, which we soon learned is the most powerful entity in planning, even more so than the mayor. And to these bodies, Rome, when it comes to public space is just meant to be blank, is open space. Not really, is public because the public comes, but it's open, is a blank canvas to see the building of importance at the end. And this idea that anything you were to put in the public space would somehow be a distraction from the protagonist was the kind of prevailing idea. You may have a single monument in the middle, as you see, of course, in the Campidoglio, and actually in St. Peter's as well, but a single element, y basta. So for us, we wanted to challenge that. We wanted to introduce more plants. We wanted to add an element of interaction, as this tends to be let's say, I don't want to say a trend, but it tends to be an understanding in public space that you need to have a foreground to the background. You need to create interaction. You need to create tactility, give people something to experience. Otherwise, they come, they look, okay, they might be interested in the basilica, they might not really be, but they come, they look, they take a picture, the space is blank, and they leave. So we wanted to challenge that. Again, we look around. The landscape's very lovely, actually, I have to say. If you think of where the basilica sits in the city, historically and today, this gives you the feeling that we are out in the meadow. So there was something intriguing about the plants, but we also understood the mandate was not to make a garden, but to make a square. Truthfully, there are issues with the landscape as we understood in the past. It doesn't necessarily age very well. It's difficult to maintain. The city not necessarily investing in maintaining that landscape. So there were patchy spots. Here in the middle, this is a very important spot because this is where the stage sits for the big concert. If you know, May 1st, they have a big concert called Primo Maggio, which is a kind of Labor Day concert. And they always set up the stage in this spot. In fact, I think the next image you'll see it. We were here in late June, early July, and that grass still hadn't regrown in that area. So this is why, this is why the client was saying to us, the city was saying to us, look, try to restrain from vegetation, despite us saying, but it's good for managing heat island. This was the kind of creative tension. Here you go. Here's the picture. So May 1st, every year, there's a massive concert here. The space that I showed you earlier that looks empty is actually quite full on this day. And not only May 1st, but throughout the year, there will be events. There will be political demonstrations and gatherings here. So in a way, the space has its relevance to people, but not on a daily basis, only for these major events. And our question was, how do we create a space that serves these events, but also serves the other 360 days of the year? Because those days are just as important and far outnumber the days of events. Of course, to design a piazza, you need to also know something about what the piazza is for. The outside is the outside, but there's a very important inside here, which we wanted to create a very strong narrative between inside and out. If you've been, I don't know, has the class been? Have you guys been inside? Yeah. That's right. You go inside and it just overwhelms the senses, the scale that you don't really anticipate from outside. The ornamentality, the layering. I mean, the ceiling, exquisite. But the one thing that stood out, perhaps more than anything else, would be the floors. And the floors are very special. It's a particular style of interior paving called cosmati. And it's a long tradition in the Roman Empire of taking elements from other buildings, sometimes stealing them, or pillaging buildings, but taking elements from former buildings, reusing small pieces to create these kind of mosaics in some of the most intriguing and ornate patterns. If you look closely, you actually see Arabic patterns and so on in here. So there's a really long history of this kind of pattern making. And you could even say circularity in terms of materials, because this is the earliest ideas of sustainability. And this pattern, this floor, particularly this pattern, if you visit, you'll see it. This one just kind of weaving its way down the main axis of the basilica really stuck with us. It's like, wow, this is almost flowing. It almost looks like water. We had a simple idea, even standing there whispering to each other, saying, what if we just took this and what if that floor just kept going right out the front door and became the piazza? It'd connect the inside and out. This is, in a way, already quite a beautiful thing. We don't need to add to the design. And almost by chance, as we were leaving the basilica, we look at the gates. This is the gate right outside. And we saw this motif in the ironwork, as if to suggest some kind of connection to the floor. So we said, I think there might be something here. We have the cosmati inside. We have this cosmati-esque ironwork. We should just carry that gesture further out into the space, which will merge the narrative from inside to out. So what to do next? We went to a nearby cafe. We were hungry. Carbonara, of course. And then after the meal, taking out the placemats. They were perfect. They were brown, plain on the back. And we just start sketching. And we were there for 2-3 hours as a team. It's a moment that, rarely happens in the career. I've been working now, 20 years or so, and it's probably only the third time that you can be in a cafe and just with the team. Very, very kind of pure idea of what an architect does. But we had a lovely afternoon, sketching, thinking, brainstorming, debating, extra coffee, a bit of wine. We got back to the studio, we kept sketching, we kept thinking, how do we make cosmati? How do we take cosmati and make that not just a pattern, but a space? We also thought about the role of water in Rome. You'll know, of course, you're here, the importance of water in Rome's history, starting with its foundings on the River Tiber and the role of aqueducts bringing in fresh water to the city. And to this day, you have this tactility of water. You see the fountains, you see the drinking taps, and water, particularly in those summer months, is just inextricably linked to the history of Rome and its kind of identity today. Also in mind was a project that you may know. This is in Bordeaux. It's called the Water Mirror. And it was a new public space done about 15 years ago by now. And I had the pleasure of visiting this with family. And it's just exquisite. It's a very simple idea, just a thin sheet of water. Again, this wasn't the first time it's been done, but it has really transformed Bordeaux. It is now on the top 10, if not the top 3 things you must do when you're in Bordeaux. And what gives it presence is not just the fountain, but the fact that it is this kind of mirror for this classical facade of the city. And quite importantly, it's an attractor. It brings people. The mist and the fog, when it comes out, it attracts people, particularly kids, to come and play. And this idea, at the time, my daughter was 3, and we just had a glorious day there. And it just thinking, is there a way to bring that element of engagement with water to Piazza San Giovanni? Given Rome's history, given this idea that people want to experience, they want an activity, they want to do something in public space, not just stand there and look at the facade. And it's true, we have places like Trevi Fountain where tourists, they can touch or they can throw a coin in, but they can't really fully immerse themselves. In fact, when they do, they end up in the paper, right? And they make a fool of themselves. So we wanted to create an opportunity to play with the water, to really engage. I should also mention that water in plazas is nothing new in Rome. Perhaps you guys have studied this. If not, you should know that Piazza Navona, just 5 minutes from here, has had a long history of water. These were the dates. I'm terrible with dates, so I wrote them down. 1600s all the way to 1865, with a bit of a gap there because of an epidemic. We can relate to those, right? Through those many, many years, they would flood this plaza on Sundays in August. They would block the drains from the fountains, and they would let this flood for the day. And they would, run carts through here, and people would come. It was purely for the enjoyment and the refreshing of people. So this idea that we already have a history of engagement with water, but we've lost it. Interesting enough, the old design of Piazza Navona had this kind of concave shape from when it was a track. So it was easy to create this kind of containment. I'm afraid if we tried it now, we'd have a bit of a mess. So we thought, let's try this again in our space. We're also aware of Rome's C40 initiatives. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the C40 is a program of mayors around the world. I believe 40 stands for 40 cities. And these mayors have all agreed that they have some priorities to tackle in terms of improving quality of life and addressing sustainability within their cities. Rome is a member city, and they have a number of initiatives that they're part of, including Cool Cities Network, which deals with urban heating. We'll know how the heat island effect impacts quality of life in Rome. Urban Nature Accelerator, give us those plants, please. And Urban Flooding Network, not so much of an issue in Piazza San Giovanni in Lateran, but across the city when you have these rain events, the acqua de bomba, then bomba d'acqua, sorry. It is a significant event, and we get localized flooding. So we asked ourselves, how can this project address these larger considerations within the city? Putting all that together, we sat down before we even really got into the design to set out some objectives. Some of these were clearly stated in our brief. Some of them were not yet really defined, not really understood. What are we trying to do in this project? For sure, the client knew that we needed to celebrate the Holy Year. We needed to facilitate the movement of people and pilgrims. This was about as far as the brief went. But for us, if you're going to make this massive investment in public space for an event, you should be thinking about the legacy beyond that event. Just like with the Olympics or the World Cup or any of these things, you must think beyond the event itself. What will this project give the citizens and the visitors after the event is gone? So for us, it was about raising the quality of experience, supporting these major events, the May 1st concert, the other demonstrations, and contributing to those goals of C40. So in terms of the design, what were the aims? What were the strategies we thought would be important? That central axis that you saw in the photos, we thought it was really important to preserve that, out of the dignity of the facade. Let's remember that the basilica is still the anchor of this space, and for many coming to this piazza it is just about passing through to reach the basilica, particularly during the pilgrimage. So reinforce the central axis, but also to create this cross axis of activation. We called it a transept, borrowing the term from the basilica itself. So you could think of this main axis as the nave. It's right on axis. And we created this new transepto, which has a story now to relate to the Scala Santa, which sits right here. We also, of course, want to facilitate and support those large-scale events. We had to think about the position of the stage, which is off axis, and this implied that spot is really important to consider that the stage would be there. Unique to the site is this slope, which is actually a great advantage in terms of elevating the basilica and giving it its prominence, but it's also a challenge in terms of accessibility. So for us, it was a question, how do you use that slope of a gentle 4% or so as a resource? Integrate water. This is part of cooling cities, and you could see this is already in our mind. And we said early on to integrate green, but you can see we had to be quite modest about it because our client was saying, look, there were two camps, let's say, even within the client team or within the city. There was the vegetation camp and there was the no vegetation camp, and they were at odds with one another. And our design was a kind of testing ground to see which department's arguments would come forward. And that's welcome to the political side of any project, particularly in Rome. So at the beginning, we had to imply that, look, green is important. We were modest enough, we were under pressure. We had to say it's just at the perimeter, but there's this vast quantum of green in the side that we should somehow leverage upon. I mentioned we started in June. By August, we had to have a concept already because, we have to go. Bye. There's a deadline. We have to finish construction by December of last year. So we only had 6 weeks to come up with a concept. This was that drawing at the time. You can see it's actually quite similar to the design we have now because there was no rethinking. There was just moving forward constantly. A very unprecedented speed for Rome. And I think in this sense, I can say our experience in Saudi Arabia and other fast-moving economies was helpful because we know how to do these things a bit quicker. You can see the pools. You can see the cosmati down the middle. You can see the pavement. You can see the green at the beginning was actually very, very modest, too modest in my opinion. We were asked at one point to even delete it. Just don't show the green. But we fought. And I think today, there's a lot of opinions or even our own feelings on how much of the green we would want. Certainly not grass. That's another point I'll mention in a moment. But we always wanted more green. So we fought where we could for more green. Sorry, let me just get some water. The other thing to consider in Rome, when you make public space, traditionally, you're only to use 3 materials. Sanpetrini, the beautiful cobbles, basaltino, the volcanic stone, which is dark, and travertino. Yeah, that's it. It's actually quite refined and elegant. It makes it easy for a designer. These are your materials, and there are long-standing supply chains in Rome. So these are families that run these certain quarries and things. So in a way, the decision of materiality was already settled. We knew. We had not as much control as we would like on the final selection of the material because they were working so fast, but we at least could author an arrangement of where these materials go. And in terms of the water, we started thinking, how do we integrate water in a meaningful way? We had the idea, of course, of putting the circles of water, these kind of vaschi di acqua, very simple plates of water, up at the top of the hill so we can capture reflections. We wanted to use that slope as an element of drainage. So the idea would be that these pools could actually drain, the water would flow down the length of the plaza and drain at the bottom. Makes sense, we're using gravity, yeah? In the case of a storm, that same system would collect water by gravity. And with a reservoir underground, we could detain water to prevent overburdening the sewer system. So we're making our contribution to sustainable cities in this way. So it was always our idea to use the slope and to let the water move, not in a straight line, but to follow the curve, which is to slow it down as it moves down the curve. It's kind of the spirit of Cosmati that you saw on the floor flowing down the piazza. Why 12 circles? We also had this talk, and this came out of the discussion in at the cafe, one of the young architects in our team recalling her trip to Prague. And she said, they had this cuckoo clock, and the tourists always come out at the hour. You can show up at 11, and the cuckoo clock comes out. Everybody waits, and the cuckoo clock, cuckoo, cuckoo, 11 times, yeah? Well, could we do that with water? Could we have these fountains, and then just before the hour, they all drain, and it gets quiet, and then, like Illuminati, 11 circles of water for 11 o'clock. And then the fountains could go on again. So we were really keen to do this. The client loved it. Everything was great. We were going to have 12 fountains, 12 hours of the day, yeah? 12 hours on the clock at least. Putting that all together, fountains, Cosmati River, Piazza, we were feeling that things were coming together. It was also to be that when there are major events, for example, the arrival of the Pope, we wanted to preserve the idea of a road down the middle. In fact, we were told we needed to maintain the road. A bit of a struggle right now as they've put up some bollards and planters to block the road, but again, welcome to Rome and different authorities talking. The idea was that we could use the central axis as a way to organize an event if there's a procession. Some more visuals of this design. This was the design as of September, so 3 months after we visited the site, we had to have this ready. It's like your student projects, yeah? You got to go quick. But there you can see the river. We were excited the children could come and race paper or leaves or boats. The role of the relationships of the foreground, the background, the sense of space. And quite importantly, the transverse axis. We wanted to bring the Scala Santa into this space because it's on the other side of the street. And we thought, well, how can we engage it within the space? So the water is a perfect medium for reflecting and pulling it in. And if you go there today, you definitely feel this transetto di acqua, as we started calling it, is as strong as the central axis, is possibly even more engaging. Well, we were happy because the project went quiet for a bit, and then we started seeing the mayor giving talks about the projects and using our renderings. So it was a pretty good indication that we were getting approval. There's a very long process of validation in Rome, and it is all a bit behind closed doors. So we were waiting and wondering. But once we got the green light, we went to work. We got very specific. We brought in the fountain designers that designed that project in Bordeaux. So I remember calling them and saying, hey, I went to your fountain in Bordeaux and it was amazing. I looked it up, I saw that you guys designed it. Would you like to join us in Rome? And they were happy to. So they came up with this approach. The tank is at the bottom of the hill. You let gravity bring the water back to the tank. You use pumping to push the water uphill. So the water feeding the fountains has to be under pressure. It's easy to push that water under pressure up a hill and just let it drain downhill. So we had a logical place for the tank. They knew exactly how to run it, how to design it, how big it needed to be, and so on. We also spent quite a bit of time in the studio doing a bit of technical work. This is where it starts getting real. It's no longer about pretty pictures, but we had a challenge. We have a sloped site, about almost 5%. And we had this idea of reflective circles of water. Well, the bigger, if anybody's tried to hold a plate of water, yeah, it's not so easy, right? You try to do that on a slope, we know what happens, right? Initial feedback was, well, just shrink the circles, make them really small, because the bigger they go, the more you get steep areas which are no longer accessible. It was a point of insistence for me, actually. The team almost started hating me. I kept saying no. They kept coming back with small circles. And I said, why are they so small? And they said, well, because we have this issue with the slopes. I said, no, we got to find a different way, guys. They were drawing and then checking slopes, drawing and checking slopes. I said, this is not a sophisticated process. This is a trial and error. We have tools. And so if anyone here in the room or listening back in Arkansas is into Grasshopper and Galapagos and things, here's a very practical example of how we put these tools into play. The guys set up a script where, the objective was maximize the size of the circles, but also make sure we never exceed 5% slope anywhere. And they ran this script for 24 hours or more, I think over the weekend, and it iterated some 30,000 versions, coming up with all kinds of variations of the positions. We knew which sizes we want and so on. And eventually it came to a short list, and we just looked at them on Monday morning and we said, we like that one. Why? Because of the kind of balance between large, medium, and small. So real good example of using technology and scripting in a powerful way to solve a real problem. We also had some problems. How do you actually make this water flow down a river and not spill out? And also we have to consider in a crowd, you don't want a deep curb. So we needed to have a very, very shallow gutter that could allow the water to flow, and even the sweeping of the water as it comes around the turn is part of the beauty of the kind of river. But how do you engineer all that? How do you make that work? Is tough. It's not easy. Also, you want to standardize the components. You don't want these to be having 500 unique pieces. So this was a big challenge, and we had a good time working with the team in France on this. It was quite the challenge. We even pushed to get more landscape. So the amount of green that you see in today was after many, many rounds of trying to get more and helping the camp that was pro-green to try to get more of that. We even worked with our landscape architect to get more variety in the plants. You'll see today it's all grass. Again, a bit of a coordination issue, let's say, a bureaucratic thing to just expedite the landscape and just put down grass. But we are confident that nature will become an author in this. Nature over time will replace the golf course look with proper wildflowers and things, just like we saw in the site before. Another challenge, a personal one that sent me on another flight down to Rome to fight a point here. The Sovrintendenza came back to us and said, we don't want that much travertine. Piazzas in Rome are mostly black. Piazzas are, if you think of St. Peter's, if you think of Piazza Campidoglio, they are basalts with white stripes. So you architects are in Rome, you need to follow the Roman tradition. You need a black plaza with white accents. And we said, come on. In fact, they said, no. And we also don't want it to be too elaborate because we want it to be blank so we can see the basilica. And this was a huge point. There was a few sleepless nights. How are we going to convince them not? This is ludicrous. How are we going to get around this? This is what they wanted. This is what we had. What to do? In moments like this, you can use all the rational arguments and discussions and phone calls and this, but sometimes you just have to draw it. So we took our design, we made it all black. We said, this is going to be horrible. Don't they see? They don't like it. They still kind of weren't convinced. We even compared and we said, well, look, we get that. We are trying to do something different though. If Rome is to address its sustainability concerns of the C40, can we just take one incremental change here? Can we do one thing a bit different, which is to reverse the proportions of travertine and basalt? Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, St. Peter's, Campidoglio, basalt with white stripes. We wanted to just flip that and make it travertino with basalt stripes. Another point of practicality, our fountain designer told us that if you want to get a higher, a reflection of higher clarity, you should have a dark background. So we knew those circles needed to be basalt. You can say it's a self-imposed constraint because we wanted a reflection, but okay. If we're going to have those dark circles, then we want mostly white piazza. We want to retain a certain amount of travertino. But to do that, we really had to convince the Sovrintendenza, starting with the assessora. Yeah, so we had a nice meeting with her. This is where I think it helps as a company. I'd say we're an Italian company. I'm clearly not Italian. I grew up in Florida, yeah, but being part of OneWorks as an international company, the managing partners put me specifically on the project with the Italians because I think they saw that it's useful to have someone who's not Italian in the room, even if that doesn't give you an advantage in language, but it gives you a different way to look at problems. So what did we do? We wanted to make this very visceral, to feel the problem. So we took Campidoglio, and we just got rid of all the stripes. We said, is this what you want? You want all black, yeah? You don't want any lines. I think they started to understand, yeah? You need contrast. The beauty of this project is, of course, in the contrast. That's how you read the pattern and the delineation of space. And because there was already this idea that a dominance of white would help climate goals, we kept pushing for this because we were worried that they might just say, okay, fine, you can have your white stripes, but just make the whole thing basalt and, only white lines. So a couple months of quiet, we understood that even the Vatican was weighing in on this. And eventually, yeah, they came back and they said, we accept the idea. But even before that, we posed these issues to the client. We even asked them, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to preserve Rome as it is? Or are we trying to preserve its heritage? This idea. Do we want Rome of yesterday, or are we actually trying to make tomorrow's Rome? And so, it's a small change from primarily basalt to primarily travertino, but ultimately we succeeded. They finally signed off, after a bit of a stalemate, they finally signed off on a piazza that's predominantly travertino, which we think is a incremental step, a positive step towards reducing heat island. So a bit of a success. And then they started, yeah? This photo showed up on my WhatsApp, a bit intimidating, whoa, but also quite exciting. I've been told they went to reuse. In fact, they lifted many of these, and where they could, they've reused them, which is great. If not, on our site elsewhere in Rome. So there's a great material reuse. And they started to excavate. And then what? Yeah? Just, let me go back here. This was on my WhatsApp April 29th, just about a year ago. Less than a month later, boom, what do they find? Walls, yeah? Of course, it's Rome. We started this project without a real survey. Imagine that. 18 months, go. First question, where's the survey? Oh, we don't have one yet, but when we start working, we'll let you know. What do you mean? So this was a big challenge for us. We always knew that our archaeologists informed us. We knew that there would be remnants here, but we had no idea where they might be. We had some indications. They did some radioactive kind of investigation, but it was all a bit murky. So we just had to take a chance. The story was picked up on CNN, so that was exciting. You might have seen this. And after a little bit more excavation, they discovered the remnants of this papal palace. sitting right in the middle, right where we want to have the water tank. Oh no. Here we are sitting in the studio thinking, okay, all the water's canceled. Were we stupid? Were we naive? Why is this is what happens when a non-Italian, an American with his optimism shows up on the team and thinks, hey, let's put water in Rome, and we only have 18 months. But this is where persistence and this kind of, if I can say, this kind of cheerfulness or optimism that I've been told is kind of an American thing. This is where it helps, because you're like, come on, guys, we'll find a way. We will find a way. And so many conversations, a complete reshuffle of the water tank. So you remember before it was down here, right on the curve of the wall. We moved it and we had to shrink it, which meant a certain reduction of water elements. It could not occupy the lower spot where we wanted to feed the tank by gravity. We had to move it further north, meaning we couldn't achieve the gravitational drainage idea to the same extent that we had with the river. We still have it in play for the fountains, but we basically had to delete the beautiful rivers. And it was tears down my cheeks, almost following the exact same pattern of Cosmati. But alas, okay, we had two water ideas. We had the Cosmati River and we had the fountain. So at least we had, let's hope for at least one, yeah? This is that optimism, guys. We've lost one, but let's keep working hard to make sure we get at least the water circles and the reflections. Here you can see that tank coming in, very compact, and sitting right between the walls of the palace. Now, we're told that the palace had a spa or some kind of water, of course, was even more precious as we go back into the centuries. So there was some element of a water, either, what do you call it? The word escaped me, but a kind of spring. Sorry, there we go. Either there was a spring or there was some kind of room committed to water in the old palace. So in some ways, we're kind of bringing back that idea that there's an element of water built within. But you can see here in blue the walls, and that tank is just nestled in there. All done in precast, which we changed. Originally it was site cast. We changed to precast, and we just scaled the tank to fit the ruins. And that meant scaling back a bit on the magnitude, the number of jets, the number of effects, but still, achieving the aims. Another example, so this is a little bit further in the north here, in the north corner. Some of the smaller water circles. The blue is the supply under pressure. The red is the drainage. We had to change that a bit, that it slopes, sort of goes around. We had to change the gravitational pull of the drainage. But in any case, we managed to reconnect every single one of those fountains with outlets for the water and drainage along the perimeter, as you see today. Well, there was no excavation done here yet. There was no survey. So what do? They started just in this area. They did a bit of digging to start. And this was going to be the kind of litmus test of our idea. And what did we find? Yeah, walls, of course, yeah? And when I say walls, these aren't just walls like way down. In Rome, it is true that if you kick the ground, you might find the top of the wall. Some of the tops of these walls were just 50 centimeters below the grass. So you can go out anywhere in Rome. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but if you dig a little bit, you're probably going to touch the top of a temple or something. So with this, we had a problem because we couldn't pass the drainage lines through the wall. We couldn't go over the top. And we asked the Sovrintendenza, can we just make a small penetration? Can we make a notch? Of course not. No, we must preserve everything as it is found, because the Sovrintendenza, the Heritage Board's role, their mandate is to not change anything about Rome, not even a penetration through a wall, which, mind you, will be buried. So we're asking, what is more important? The feeling, the kind of sanctity of keeping a wall the way it was for centuries, underground, knowing that it's the way it always has been, or to make a small modification to activate space and bring new life to the city. Well, the door was shut. This is Rome. So what to do? This was our original design. We were meant to have jets in all of these circles, including the ones in that area that I just showed. The client was saying, the city and the Direttore dei Lavori, the site supervisor, was basically, everybody wants to finish. It was now September. So simple idea, just cancel the water. Yeah, there's gonna be 6 other fountains, just cancel them. But we said, no, guys, really. To have these circles in basalt, and we know why they have to be in basalt, because they're meant to be reflective. And to make 12 and to make 6 of them blank, empty, they said, well, but you have 6 fountains. 6 is also a nice number. No, I said, no, but hey, there are 12. We don't even have the clock anymore. We had to lose the clock because, interestingly enough, the clock works by having a certain number of pumps. So you basically sequence the filling of the tanks by a certain number of pumps. And we had to reduce the number of pumps, so we don't have the ability to have the clock. So they said, there's no clock, there's no need for 12, just accept 6. It helps to be a bit stubborn in this profession, in a friendly way. There has to be a way, there has to be a way. So we settled for a proposal where, rather than fountains, which need supply and drainage, we said, let's just do mist. Yeah, let's try to find a way to supply this, these 3, and that only with water under pressure, which creates the mist, and you don't need to collect that water. So you cut down significantly on the amount of drainage and the chances of encountering more walls. There was a moment in a room where the contractor, the director of the DL, was saying, I don't know, what do you think? I think this kind of mist is kind of ugly. It's like, they were doing everything they could to try to shoot down this idea, because to them, the easiest thing to do would just be to cancel the water. But through these kind of drawings and supporting them, drawing everything, doing a little bit of extra work, but quite importantly, building a narrative and a dialogue of why, reminding the client why, we convinced them to have this mist. So if you're out there today, you'll see every one of those 12 circles has water. And if you only see mist here and you wonder why there's no fountain, now you know why, yeah. So construction moving ahead. This is November 27th. We only have a month to go. Yeah. These photos were popping up on my WhatsApp every week or so. And it was really exciting to see, but also a bit nerve-wracking, How are they going to finish? Are they going to finish? We have strict mandate to be done by December 28th. But things were coming into place, the circles, but also, the axes of green. So we're quite excited about that. And then voila, a month later, they pulled it off. Well, it was a huge moment I was on holiday actually for Christmas, but I flew over for the opening and walking around, full of all kinds of emotions, mostly like, oh my God, how did we finish in 18 months somehow? And, things are there. Yes, okay, we don't like the grass, but nature will take care of that. The paving, the cutting, it's not exemplifying the heritage of craftsmanship in Rome. It could be done a lot, but they were under such pressure to finish that they were just cutting and throwing down. Somehow, by a miracle though, I give them a lot of credit. The team did an incredible job despite all the setbacks, the pressure, the archaeology, the water tank, changing colors, They managed to finish by December 28th. A beautiful day. That central area looked really, really blank and white. And I said, ooh, what happened? What happened? But this is where you learn that you need a good rain or two to wash away the dust. Afterwards, I think it's here, yeah, after a good rain or two, you can start to see the tonality differences, the materiality. Even before that, though, as the sun started setting, you start picking up on the materiality, the quality of cutting, even though not the most exquisite. I mean, it's almost, dare I say, it's kind of insulting to reference Cosmati inside, which is so beautifully done. And then it's done in this kind of, brutal way. But okay, it's outside space. It's public space. Public space is not your kitchen or your bathroom floor. It is meant to be worn. Look at the stone paving around Rome and you'll see. The mayor was very happy. He was under enormous pressure to make sure he delivered. As you might have known, you might have talked about this in this whole thing about the Jubilee, kind of massive political pressure to deliver on these projects. And the moment came where they flicked on the fountains, everybody gathered around to see, and there they were. And it was almost, couldn't believe that we managed to get fountains in 18 months in Rome. You know, are they the most exquisite? No, I mean, sure, there's much better ones in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of a lot of things, but the fact that we were able to help the client push through, it was, you know, it has created a foreground, an interaction, a tactility that people to this day, and hopefully for the next many years, will appreciate. I took a walk during the event to the back corner just to have a look at the mist, and sat there for a moment and said, oh, thank God, you know, we got the mist, because if the roof had gotten their way, this would be blank, this would be blank, and I think that one would have been blank. So having 12, even with just mist, makes such a difference in the environment. And the proof of that was watching people, particularly the kids, you know, just feeling that mist and touching it and feeling the space. You know, so for this little boy, San Giovanni and Laterano, the piazza, at his age, this is what he'll know. And I hope that for the rest of his years and his kids and his kids' kids, he can understand this piazza as this kind of active space for people. So I promised some reflections, yeah? What did I learn from all this? Well, first of all, you have to create a vision, really, which speaks to place and to people. I think it was helpful throughout the process to be able to go back to the group and remind them, what are we really trying to do here? What has the mayor signed off on? Why are we, you know, why do we want these fountains? What are they adding to the city? What's the narrative? Why? And when it's something that people could feel and associate with, you're more likely to find that it builds a certain traction. Simple, design for people. I mean, quite often as architects, we get obsessed with alignments or materiality or these things that nobody really cares about. In the end, people care about themselves and their families and their interactions. So if you make things that people will enjoy, you're more likely to have a successful project. Dream big, but also be humble. It's one of my favorite ones. I'm kind of known in the studio as being a bit optimistic, always American, that Americano, you know, he's so like ambitious. Why can't we just do it a bit simpler, you know? There's an optimism though that we shouldn't lose in these projects. Make a big dream. You don't have a survey, okay, but could there be a way to make water? Let's find a way. But also be humble. I mean, sometimes you have to step back, especially when you're working in Rome. You know, I'm a guest in this city. We're all guests in this beautiful city of thousands of years of history. So who am I to come in and say, no, it has to be this way? No. I'm humbly a guest in this magnificent city, but we do come with sensibilities. We come with dreams. We come with ideas, and more importantly, strategies to implement those ideas. And for that reason, you have to be ready to defend and adapt. Tadao Ando is known for, you know, before being an architect, he was a boxer. And there's a very famous interview with Tadao Ando where the journalist asked him, what has boxing taught you? What lessons do you apply from being a boxer to architecture? And he said, it's easy. It's almost the same. You have to be ready to fight. So, you know, for all these things that I showed you, the ruins, the color, the materiality, it would have been really easy to just, I can't be bothered, or let's give up, or let's just say yes. Or they're the client, we must do as the client says out of respect, or there's no time, or there was a million reasons. But sometimes you just have to jump on that plane. You have to sit down face to face with the most important part of your client team and just talk through it. Show them a picture of, you know, something ugly to scare them a little bit, and they might then start to understand why and where you're coming from. And a very important point, I think, when, you know, we're all architects, we're all dreaming about changing the world, fixing everything, curing all the ailments, addressing all of sustainability, all of placemaking, all of regeneration in one project in one go. Wish it was that easy. You have to embrace incremental change. You know, every single project is part of an ongoing succession of evolving thought in Rome or in any city. So you should look for those moments of incremental change. In our case, it was the change of black to white, you know, from mostly basalt to mostly travertino. We'll accept that as one step in that direction. Is it, you know, could we do more for Heat Island? Sure. I mean, actually, a fully vegetated garden with lots of trees would have been a brilliant idea from a sustainability point of view. And I mentioned I would tell you why no trees. We were told not to have trees because of the Primo Agio. When you have that concert, they want open sight lines, so no trees, no grass. We were able to convince them to have a little bit more vegetation than they thought, which is a positive step. But you know, in all of this, particularly with sustainability, it's really, really important to embrace incremental change, to see that as a way to make long-term change in this industry. Those are kind of from the design side. From the point of view as just as a future practitioner, some little lessons, sketch a lot. I mean, I think we spent time from the moment we were in that cafe all the way through the design process. We have a team in Milan, in Rome, and also in London, exchanging messages, typing. Okay, words are great, but sketch it for me. What do you mean? You know, do your words really sound as good as what you think? When you put your pen to the paper and you try to draw it, then you start to realize, okay, this is what I mean, or we should try something like this. So it's very important to sketch. Travel as well. I mean, obviously you all here traveling right now. For those back in Arkansas, if you have the chance, it doesn't even have to be far. It could be to the next town. But traveling, looking around at where you are, you're building your library. You know, you're quite young now. As you grow, you'll see things, you'll remember, oh my God, I saw this thing 10 years ago. That becomes your part of your database of things you draw upon. So travel, build that library. The Bordeaux project was super influential for this project. Can't underestimate the importance of travel, and I think you appreciate that already. And lastly, most importantly, you can never underestimate, just enjoy what you do. Enjoy the challenges, especially. Design's not straightforward, especially when it's a real project, when you're dealing with many different entities with their own interests and their own drivers. And so there will be challenges. In fact, if there are no challenges, it's probably a really boring project. You know, if you have to design a parking garage in the outskirts of, I don't know where, there might be one or two little issues, but if everything's going smoothly, you're probably not really questioning things. You're not trying to do anything newer and bigger and better. So embrace the challenges, look for them, look for ways to try to solve the challenges. So yeah, that's it. You know, thank you for your attention. I'd say, you know, I understand we have some questions. I really look forward to them. I would just say, you know, be practical about in projects. One last point, be practical about what you can really achieve. Be realistic, dream, but also, you know, put things into perspective. So there we go. Thank you very much.
All right, Lucas, thanks. I'm enthusiastic about your lecture for two major reasons. First, because as a Roman, I was born in Rome, raised in Rome, studied in Rome. I've been abroad a lot, but as a Roman, listening the explanation about the whole process which led to the final result is fundamental. So thanks a lot. And I think it was really useful for the students because many of them are dealing with the public space and understand how careful you were with the context and trying as a foreigner to understand the essence of Rome. This is really important for them. And I think it should be a good lesson for any architect operating in whatever context. You should go slowly, tiptoe, touching slightly the things, understand how it works, the politics, the bureaucracy, the context, the habits of people, and on and on and on, from the materials to the habit of people. And so I think it was process-wise very, very, very interesting. And we try to teach our students to sketch a lot, to draw a lot. And I'm very glad that there were so many beautiful sketches, study drawings and diagrams about how the process was moving on forward. And I think this was also very useful, because sketching and drawing is how to develop ideas in an artistic and fluid way somehow. So thanks a lot. I'm really enthusiastic. Thanks for your contribution today. All right, as promised, I have a few questions that are a few particularly interesting, and I selected a number of them. And one which I found very interesting is like how you have felt that your work has impacted the world.
The world. That's a big scope. Yeah. I like the question, though. Yeah, I like the question.
It's a tough question. Sorry.
How does it impact the world? I mean, I think it's very difficult to, or we have to be realistic about the scope of a project, whether projects can really have a world impact. It certainly starts at a more granular level. Let's start with Rome itself. You know, it's a sea change for Romans to see public space like this. I know it's been contentious. I know not every decision we made was, welcomed by everyone. And, even as designers, we humbly look back and say, oh, we probably would have done some things differently. But most importantly, we did open a narrative. We know Romans like to talk. Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
To talk and to be critical, because there's always more than one side of the story. So I think that, in the Roman sense, is huge. Beyond that, we're in the C40, Rome's part of the C40, so we have the chance to extend the dialogue with 40 other cities. Rome, of course, still having its influence on other cities. Cities still look to Rome for ideas, particularly historical ones. So cities with historical heritage, with public space, still look to Rome. And if we can do something both contemporary, respecting the old, it can open up the mind to other cities in the same way that Bordeaux's influence had on me. Also, we have the pilgrims coming through from all around the world during Jubilee. So though they're not architects, and maybe, they will just come to a space where they see the basilica with water, and they'll say, oh, wow, this is different than the other ones. And maybe I like it, maybe I don't, So in that way, we can make the impact to people at an individual level, but around the world.
Great, thanks a lot. I liked your answer. It was really interesting. Somebody was asking, how would you compare your interactive project to the other Jubilee projects?
Well, we had very little visibility on those, and actually, it's a beautiful question, because as this project was part of a wider program, it would have been really good to have a dialogue with the other projects, to have a forum where we put all the designs together. We could talk about the objectives collectively. There was none of that. We were very much isolated from the other projects. So I've only know about them from the mayor's lovely Instagram videos that he's been doing. And what I can see is other projects have perhaps more of a neighborhood scale. There's a beautiful one with, I can't remember the name now, lots of gravels and things. So from a materiality point of view, from a landscape point of view, there was more opportunities for plants. We were given a mandate to be very civic, very blank because of the Primo Maggio. So, the circumstances, the context in some ways dictated why our project may look different than the others. But I think they each carry their own narrative or their own story of how they reached the solution they did.
Well, at least we know by the former design lecture that Piazza Pia project had a lot of troubles with the archaeology and the superintendency. So it seems that you're sharing troubles, but all surviving the Roman bureaucracy, which is a great success.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, there was somebody else asking, what is the next step in your long plan? Which probably means some things about your career and where the studio could go. And
Great question. I can answer in two ways.
Great.
The project in San Giovanni first. It's not over. Well, they've had two inaugurations now. They had an inauguration that I showed here, was for half the piazza. Just last week, they had the inauguration for the second half. So in many ways, it's complete. But there's these bollards that you might have seen at the apex of the piazza. We had asked during the validation period for the police to evaluate for any possible vehicle intrusion, because we know this is a thing, this is an unfortunate theme in public space around the world. So we were questioning whether we need bollards or other things around the piazza, and the answer at the time was no, it's fine. But the bollards came in at the end because someone else finally decided they need them. Very Roman approach, yeah? And they put these bollards, you'll see them kind of truncated cones, and lo and behold, we also have another set of bollards, which are planters, because the police saw the bollards that were installed and still said those bollards aren't sufficient for a vehicle impact. So we're still in dialogue with the RUP to try to remove all the clumsy extra devices and design some proper planters that serve as benches and kind of disguise the need for defense in a civic way. I'm also hopeful, and I have this beautiful dialogue with the photographer who's also Roman, who knows the way, he's the one who told me, look, Romans love to talk, and there's a lot of talk about this project. As much as I think that the Jubilee, that the Piazza San Giovanni in Lateran is the host of Primo Maggio, this is probably controversial, but hey, it's Rome, we might as well say it. I also wonder whether if it found a new home, if it was in the Circo Massimo, as it's been for the past couple of years, it's a bigger venue. It's more of a theater type of venue. I wonder whether that could mean we could put some trees along the axis, because I think particularly if you're walking along the main road on the north, it's so hot, it's so open. I would love to put a line of trees, and those landscape strips are begging for trees, but so it's a framework that could happen. So if you ask what would happen, what are the next steps from the project, I think any public space is a living organism. And so I do believe that through dialogue, if priorities shift, it would be very easy to retrofit and put trees along that edge. Okay, we could still have Primo Maggio there. Maybe some views are obstructed. We just have to decide that it's more helpful to have trees than having, and some views would be blocked during Primo Maggio, but that's okay because trees are also very nice. That's from the standpoint of the project. I think projects like this should live on. From the second half of the question, my own goals, my own aspirations. Oh, big question. Well, I can say as a company, we at the moment we do about 50% work in Italy, 50% overseas. We're actually ramping up to do even more overseas. But at the same time, we always have our eye on our home country because opportunities like this will hopefully become more and more prevalent. I think that we've understood that the next big wave of investment in Italy will be in Rome. At the moment, Milan's had its wave, and OneWorks benefited tremendously from the uplift in development, the regeneration sites, throughout Milan. The next wave supposedly will be in Rome. Let's see. We're ready. We're excited. That entails buildings. That entails public spaces, transport, which is really our core. I actually started as a transport architect and still continue to do that today. So I would love to see, both in Rome and in other cities, really high quality urban mobility, which leverages on really high quality public space. Mobility doesn't have to be concrete. There's a feeling of infrastructure is steel and concrete, but actually infrastructure can be trees, can be timber, can be, if sourced correctly, can be more human.
That's a great thing to discuss. I have one last question.
Sure.
Just 5 minutes and then we need to go.
Yeah.
And somebody was interested in asking you if you felt any pressure from the city, which could be also translated into if you felt any pressure from the citizens, from the community.
Again, with a fast-moving project like this, the pressure that we felt was mostly it was filtered through the client. This is what they want. They want to control the direction, because in the end, it's their responsibility to deliver this project by a certain date. So because the time was so short, we didn't have the degree of consultation and engagement that normally enriches public projects. Only after the opening were we getting the feedback. I think that was just a conscious effort to just say, look, they would probably love to have engaged citizens. And in fact, if we can make a recommendation for the next Jubileo, let's start this type of project 10 years before, so we can have an engagement. Of course, we know where that might go. Everything tends to take a lot longer than that. Maybe it was strategic that they just wanted 18 months and go. But the feedback, the pressure was from the RUP, which is the municipality, and the Sovrintendenza, and other agencies. Even the contractor was putting pressure on us because of time. So simplify. But the community's voice, unfortunately, wasn't as loud as it should be.
Yeah, I understand. It makes absolutely sense. So, Lucas, unfortunately, the time available for our slot is almost
It's almost done.
gone.
Yeah, sorry, I talked
Yes,
for a while.
yes.
Yeah, but
So, no, it was very interesting. So, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.
Guys, I hope you found it this kind of interesting and hopefully inspiring for your project. There's a lot of you working in public space design, regeneration. So maybe you can find some inspirations out of this design lecture. Thank you for being with us once again. And we will meet for the third lecture. I think it's going to be about next week or something. It's very close. So thanks for your patience. And now good luck with the rest of the day. Ciao, everybody. Thanks, Lucas, again.
Ciao, ragazzi.
Ciao.
Thank you very much.